If your clutter has an aesthetic, you've been influenced. And I don't mean the cute kind of influence. I mean the expensive kind. I thought I was buying a lifestyle, but apparently I just bought more beige vases kind. We talk about decluttering as though the problem is too much stuff. And don't get me wrong, we absolutely have too much stuff. But the underlying issue, it's too many versions of yourself. So today I'm going to unpack aspirational clutter, something that is my nemesis. The things you bought for the person you wanted to be, not the one who actually lives in your house. And by you, I mean me. Trust me, I've got the receipts to prove it. But here's the twist. Clearing it out isn't just about letting go. It's about finally taking the time to design a life that fits you, which we're going to do in part 2 of this series. But first, we have to face the mess we created by chasing aesthetic. You know, that feeling when you scroll Instagram and suddenly you look around and your house is just wrong. It's maybe too colorful or too small or too lived in. Influencer culture has convinced us that if we just buy one more neutral throw, our lives are finally going to feel calm. Spoiler, it never works. I've got the throw to prove it. And while we're at it, can we talk about those influencer homes for a minute? You know, the ones with the 20-foot ceilings and the marble islands the size of small countries, and not a single power cord in sight? Who even lives like that, let alone can afford to? Meanwhile, I'm just trying to find a corner of counter space that isn't covered in yesterday's mail. Because influencer marketing doesn't sell you a product, it sells you potential. And that's how clutter sneaks in the back door, my friends. We'll talk about how to break that cycle later, but first, let's look at what aspirational clutter actually looks like in real life. Let's use me as a case study here because I'm quite familiar with it. Aspirational clutter is the stuff that represents the idealized version of yourself. Mine started years ago when I had kids and I decided I was going to be the kind of mom who made homemade, organic, everything. My kids weren't going to touch anything processed. So naturally, I bought the ice cream maker because clearly that's what wholesome families do on summer weekends. We used it once. Yes, once, maybe twice. The kids lost interest before the first batch finished churning. And it sat on the shelf for years, silently judging me from behind the air fryer. Then came my sourdough era. I'm still in it. I bought the books, the bannetons, the special flour, recycled my Dutch oven because the internet said you had to. If you've ever made sourdough, you know it's a full-time job. Feed the starter, burp the jar, wait 12 hours, fold the dough, let it rise for 3 days in the fridge and hope it doesn't smell like a science experiment. To what end? Was I trying to be Taylor Swift, just casually handing out loaves to the neighbors? Because spoiler, nobody can eat that much bread. At least not without serious consequences. And then there was my grand crafty crochet era. I bought all the yarn, the hooks, the books, even a cute little basket system to keep it all organized. I've made 2 blankets. I also have plans for a sweater. I'll get to it someday. But every one of those items represented a version of me I liked, in theory. But in practice, they were just clutter because they belonged to someone who didn't actually exist. Here's the thing, we don't come up with these better versions of ourselves out of thin air. They're sold to us. Influencers don't just show you a candle. They show you a calm, minimal life with soft lighting and 0 kid clutter. They don't show you the laundry pile just out of the frame. No, no, no. Every look promises transformation. Buy the mug and you'll slow down in the mornings. Buy this throw blanket and your evenings will feel so cozy. Buy the organizing bins and your brain will finally be able to stop buzzing. Make the bread and you'll be just like Taylor. But all it really does is shift the pressure. Now your identity, your self-worth, depends on whether your living room matches an algorithm. And I fall for it hard every time. My personal low point, millennial gray. I painted everything one color, walls, trim, doors. At the time I thought it was kind of moody and sophisticated. It wasn't. It was flat and lifeless. It was like living inside a weather app. Then came my quiet luxury phase. You remember that one? Warm neutrals, textures everywhere, trays of beads on every surface. And let me tell you, moving those trays of useless decorative beads every time I wanted to set a drink down on my coffee table was just, it was a workout. Pretty? Sure. Practical? Absolutely not. Here's why it works though. Aspirational buying scratches a deeper itch. It taps into belonging. When life feels messy or uncertain, buying into a look feels like buying control. If my space looks peaceful, maybe I'll feel peaceful, right? And honestly, that thinking exploded during the pandemic. We were all home, isolated, doom scrolling our way through perfectly curated living rooms, and subconsciously we were measuring our messy real lives against other people's staged ones. No wonder we hit add to cart, but it never lasts because you're not solving the root problem. You're not. You're just decorating over it. Every purchase is a tiny identity experiment. And when the experiment fails, the evidence piles up in your cupboards, in your closets, in your basement. I once read that clutter is postponed decisions. If that's true, then aspirational clutter is postponed acceptance. It's saying, maybe one day I'll be that person. But what if you just stopped waiting? Here's how I've learned to spot aspirational clutter in my life before it happens. The first one is if you're buying motivation instead of function, it's aspirational. Ooh, I'm looking at you, fancy water bottle that was going to turn me into a hydration queen. I see you. Number two is if you picture yourself using it but can't name when or where, it's definitely aspirational. And number three is if you already own a version that works, it's not an upgrade, it's just a distraction. So before I buy anything new, I ask myself, does this make my life easier or just more aesthetic? 9 times out of 10, it's aesthetic. And that's fine. Sometimes you just want something pretty, but you have to be honest about it. The big turning point for me was when we downsized from our suburban house in Toronto to our cottage here on the lake. I realized that half our moving boxes were filled with that maybe someday version of me. The entertainer, the gardener, the crafter, the baker. But the real me, all she wanted was space to breathe and a dock to have coffee on. Letting all that other stuff go, it wasn't failure, it was alignment. It's when the mental calm finally started to match the visual calm. So here's the takeaway here, the big one. Influencer culture will always evolve. Modern farmhouse, coastal grandmother, quiet luxury, it's all marketing. Your home shouldn't feel like a content set. It should feel like you, because every trend will tell you to add something new. But clarity, that comes from subtraction, from taking away. So think about the spaces that made you feel comfortable, the ones you wanted to stay in. Think back a bit. Maybe it was your grandma's house or that cozy boho coffee shop. They weren't trendy or cool. They felt human and comfortable, not because of the paint color, but because they made you feel something. In part 2 of this series, we're going to flip this completely upside down. You've cleared out the who you thought you'd be. And next, we're going to design for who you actually are. We're going to build your life first and then the rooms. Because when your home fits your real rhythm, clutter doesn't stand a chance. So if you're ready to stop decorating for Instagram and start designing for you, watch part 2. I'll see you over there.